Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is a money mindset expert. We have Rebekah Kiger with us. Welcome to the show, Rebekah.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's talk about your business. As a money mindset expert, what do you do?
Yeah, great question. So I help mostly entrepreneurs, and I tend to attract a lot of women, mostly women. But I help entrepreneurs to really step into that CEO money mindset, because there's a lot of differences. We kind of talked a little bit about in the pre-show. There's a lot of differences between when you're going from an employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset. So I help them navigate that, really letting go of a lot of the unconscious stories, money stories, limiting beliefs, things that are kind of running the show based on really our upbringing and some other factors. So I help them to be able to rewrite those stories so that they have the capacity to really be able to receive the kind of abundance and the kind of money that they want in their business.
Powerful. Yes. As business people, we are always focused on learning how to market, how to sell, how to be better at our thing. And money is, some people say money is like the scorecard, right? Money is how you can see in a tangible form how successful you actually are. But there are a lot of people who are damn good at marketing, and they're actually pretty good at sales, and they may even be the best at their thing. And yet they have old mental programming that is the wall between where they are, where they've been, and where they really, really, really want to be. When you're working with people, what are some of the things that you're commonly seeing?
Yeah, such a great question. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people who are really, really good at their craft, and they're not seeing the kind of results that they want in their business. And you're right. It does come down a lot of times to their money stories, money beliefs, and all of this around the money mindset, right? And so what I see a lot is that, a lot of these money blocks, they don't show up in, where we just kind of hear you're not worthy of success. You're not necessarily like audibly hearing these money blocks. And that's why we call them unconscious blocks, because a lot of times, again, it's going on kind of behind the scenes. And so really where I see these money blocks showing up for a lot of entrepreneurs is a couple key things, one being procrastination, right? So that can be a form of money blocks, right? Because ultimately there can be something underlying that's going on in your subconscious where it's telling you, that you're maybe, again, going back to that unworthiness. I know that some of the biggest, let's say, limiting beliefs around money that I see are, that I am somehow unworthy of this success, or I am undeserving of success, or I'm not good enough, so with the procrastination piece, a lot of times that's tied back to the I'm not good enough, right? Because you always are constantly, just like we were talking about before this, you're talking about how, you have to put out imperfect work sometimes, because ultimately, especially if you have an underlying belief that, you're somehow innately not good enough, none of your work will be good enough. You're never going to feel ready to put the work out there, so the way that these show up in people's lives, procrastination is a massive one, right? Not showing up fully. If you have something, a message to share, or a product that you want to get out in the marketplace, this will show up where you're kind of hiding sometimes, not feeling worthy of really stepping out and allowing your voice to be heard in the world. So you'll find that, you'll tell yourself you're going to do a live, and then that time comes around and you don't do the live, or you chicken out, things like that, not putting yourself fully out there. Those are some of the most common ones. And then I also see where people are, they're undercharging, right? Like they have these massive skill sets, and they actually have a lot of value that they can bring to the marketplace, but they're constantly concerned about whether or not their market can afford it, and am I charging too much? Am I worth this amount? That kind of thing. And kind of tying their business and the value that they provide to the world back to themselves. Meaning if I, charge too much, then I'm not doing the right thing here. Like it really assigning a meaning to themselves as it relates to their business, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. These things that we're talking about are really practical things. A lot of people have this misconception that when we're talking about money mindset, that it is directly tied into something like a law of attraction coach. Now, I've studied universal laws for many years. I have a master's degree in metaphysical science, and I was studying these things long before The Secret became kind of this big phenomenon. And people immediately then started to think, well, all I have to do is focus on something and then it's just going to manifest. But where people get off track is that we're talking about our ability to take actions that are going to generate the outcomes that we want. So when somebody decides they want a new house, there are very practical things that need to occur in order for them to, quote, manifest the house, right? And in business, what we're talking about with money mindset is when you have these unresolved, unaddressed beliefs, which is really what they are, and you may not consciously agree with them, but if you don't address them properly, they're still subconscious conditioning, and they will be the reason that you don't take the actions you need to take to get the results that you want to get. So we're not even talking about just some kind of airy fairy, wouldn't it be nice if I could just change my thinking and then money starts falling out of the sky into my lap, or somehow extra zeros are on my bank statement. We're talking about what you need, like the inner game, what you need in order to get yourself to the next level, and then the level after that, and then the level after that.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you bring in, the spiritual aspect of it, because I do talk a lot about, it's okay to be spiritual, both spiritual and wealthy, right? Because that's something that really our conditioning says isn't one and the same, and that's not necessarily true. But you're absolutely right. And it's not about just kind of sitting on your couch and thinking $1 million and it's going to fall into your lap, right? There are aligned action steps that we have to take. The challenge becomes that we have something, and in my teachings that I've learned, we call this unconscious baggage. So this baggage is basically, summed up as negative emotions around money, limiting beliefs, and limiting decisions. And when you have this baggage, it quite literally, if you can just imagine, yourself holding on to a big piece of luggage, right, which is this baggage, it quite literally will weigh you down. And it's not, you might try to move and you can't, you're not able to move as freely as you want because you have this baggage. And so those all can be addressed. And, you may be thinking, if you're listening right now, you may be thinking like, I don't have this baggage, or how do I even, recognize this baggage? But the reality is it's a simple process to be able to kind of become aware as to what these things are, so that you can overcome them, because ultimately each and every one of us was created with the limitless potential to create whatever it is that we want. We just have to know how to maneuver that baggage and kind of let it go so we can move through.
Oh yeah, you're speaking my language.
Love it.
Now, you have a background in finance, mm-hmm. which I think is wonderful, because you're not just preaching money, you're working with money all the time.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about your personal perspective on wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have spent 15 years in the financial services industry. So I still am a fiduciary financial advisor working specifically with retirees. So I do that. That's kind of like my day, if you will. Like that's what I do by day, by trade. And really one thing that I found, in all these years of working with people's money is, you start to kind of pick up on patterns and traits. And I didn't come from money. I actually came from very poverty-stricken household when I was younger. My mom was a single mom of 7 kids. So I've been on either end of the spectrum, and I didn't grow up with money. And I grew up with a lot of unconscious baggage around money from the things that I learned as a child. And so, I really wanted to know. I got to a point in my financial career where I really just wanted to know, like, what's the difference between these people over here who are living life exactly how they want to live, and they're going on vacation, they have an abundance of money, they're always doing what it is that they want to do in the world, versus the majority of the population, and who people are living paycheck to paycheck. What's the primary difference? And the more that I started to kind of observe all of that, the more that I realized that it's truly their mindset around money. All of these limiting beliefs and these things, I heard that a lot. I heard a lot of that language through the years from the people who didn't have money. And it was almost like it was a self-fulfilling prophecy for them, right? They kept speaking these limitations into their life. And then that actually truly did remain their reality, where these other people, there's a lot more that goes into it, but these other individuals were speaking a lot differently about money. Their mindset around money, their beliefs around money were very different. And so I had to unwind a heck of a lot of unconscious baggage in my own life once I started to become aware of how powerful this programming really is, in order to be able to step through that. So I genuinely truly believe that, it's kind of like a program. And I know that you talk about this too, being a mindset expert, right? Like we have programming that takes place, from the time that we're born until the age of 7, and so all of the things that I heard around money during that period of my life, which we were very, very poor, we tend to accept those things as our truths, right? And then just continue to perpetuate and believe those as we move forward in our lives. And so, it really genuinely wasn't until I understood how to rewrite that program, kind of like a computer. I was programmed with these limitations, this poverty mindset, this, inability to create what it is that I wanted. And I didn't want that program anymore. So genuinely had to like disinstall, like a computer, disinstall and let go of the old limitations and truly bring in something new to run on those programs. And so that, to me, is really the game changer, for people who want to create wealth, is, are you running on the right program?
Absolutely. Now, when you are working with a client and you identify what some of that unconscious baggage is, when it becomes no longer unconscious,
Yes.
how quickly have you seen your clients transform their lives when you're able to make what was this unconscious programming? And it's funny, right? We say it's unconscious because we're not acutely aware of it. And yet the reality is, all we really need to do is look at it. It's not as unconscious. I use the word subconscious a lot, but it's not as unconscious as people like to pretend it is. The evidence is all around us. And if you really just look at your life and you look at your results and you listen to yourself talk, it can become quite revealing what some of those beliefs and expectations are that are holding you back. But now, once that is identified and you do your thing, I know we use some similar techniques, NLP being one of them. I use types of conversational hypnosis, hypnotherapy, EFT, a lot of different other techniques as well. But when we get in there and we actually start to shift those things, What have you seen with your clients in terms of transformation that they're experiencing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, really, it depends on the individual, but I've seen instantaneous, transformations because, like you said, bringing awareness to these patterns is sometimes enough to shift it, right? Like, and you and I both know this with our background in NLP, but the unconscious mind or subconscious, you can use those, interchangeably, right? And the unconscious mind is responsible for 95% of the things that happen on a daily basis. So, that's why it's kind of like that going through the motions, people who are in this, we call it like an Iago trance. If you've ever heard that word before, it's like you're getting up every day, you're doing the same exact thing every single day, and that's that trance mode that you can be in. That's where it becomes the most unconscious because you're not even really truly thinking about the things that you're doing on a daily basis. So creating that awareness, and I have a method that I use that's called the Align method, and it's an acronym for a process I take my clients through. But the first thing, the A, stands for awareness, right? Just bringing awareness to these things. So when I talk about these things, this baggage, what are some of the things that you're saying about money? What are some of the things that you're saying about your relationship with money? So an example of this would be, it's hard to make money, right? Or I'm just not the type of person to make that kind of money. Or even if you're not saying those things out loud, or you thinking them, right? Just bringing awareness to that. Also, like you said, just looking at the patterns in your life. Like once you start to unwind all of this, it's like, oh my God, how did I not see this before? It's everywhere. It shows up in my life everywhere all the time. And I can't believe I never saw it, and that's why it's very difficult for us to see ourselves. That's why mirrors were created, right? We cannot see ourselves, including these baggages, this baggage, and we call them like blind spots, right? They're blind spots for a reason. You tend to not be able to see your own baggage. And so that's why you need a mirror in a coach, such as yourself. That's what you're doing, is really being able to hold up that mirror for the people that you're working with to say, hey, here's what I see. Are you open to seeing that? Are you open to becoming aware? And so just like you said, I mean, the awareness sometimes is enough to massively shift things. Of course, though, going further in that align method, the L stands for letting those things go. So if there's deeper levels of programs, yes, we've got to get into, the deeper levels of, techniques and things that we're using to be able to really shift those on a more, deep level if we need to. But yeah, I mean, I honestly sometimes, and even in my own life, when I become aware of a pattern now, and the more that you practice this, the more self-aware you become, right? And so once I become aware of a pattern now in my life, which I'm not perfect, just because I'm wealthy now doesn't mean that I don't have any baggage anymore. It's like just playing this game kind of with the universe to say, okay, like now I see this pattern and I'm going to go ahead and shift it because I didn't even realize it was still there. So sometimes that's enough to do it, and it can happen very rapidly. Absolutely, if you're willing to take a look at it. But that's the thing, a lot of people are not willing to take a look at these things, which I know every listener here, you're not that type of person, right? You're willing to take a look at the deeper levels. Most people don't want to see it because that means it's going to take some work. It's going to take some uncovering. And this work is not for the faint of heart. Let's be honest. I mean, we're looking at deep wounds, right? And uncovering things that may have had a hold on you for a long period of time. And so that's not always an easy conversation. And holding up the mirror is not always the most fun thing to do, because it's like, okay, now I got to look at my crap and figure out what I'm doing and, how I've been and how I can shift things going forward.
Yeah. I'd love to just say one thing on this, because you're absolutely right. The tendency is to want to avoid it.
Yes.
But, and I've heard myself say this to many of my clients. In fact, I said it just this morning with one of my sessions. I think I actually said it on 2 of the sessions I had this morning. It's always been there. The hurtful stuff that you don't want to deal with, that you don't want to look at, it has always been there, and it has been adversely affecting you this whole time. It doesn't feel good. And just because you think that you are repressing it, you think that you are successfully pushing it away, in reality, you're still suffering. So you're not actually doing yourself any favors. And taking that a step further, when you don't deal with it, not only are you feeling it, not only are you still bumping up against it, not only are you still feeling it, but at some point, you're going to reach sort of a critical mass. Like you can't take it anymore. And that's not a good place to be. So if we use a really practical example, so let's say somebody is angry and they're repressing it and they're pushing it away and they're not dealing with it. They're not releasing it in a healthy way. What happens? At some point, they cannot take it anymore. There's no more room for the negativity. There's no more room for the anger. And it can take one tiny little thing, something that their innocent little child says to them that's going to set them off, and they literally just vomit their negativity all over anyone and everything that is in their vicinity. So if we're really honest with ourselves, you think you're getting away with it, you're not. At some point, shit is going to hit the fan and you're going to have to deal with these things. And maybe you're not going to work through it as effectively as you could if you would just tackle it head on. Kind of like that person with the anger issues, it's going to come out. They're going to have somewhat of a release, but if they don't do the inner work, then the pattern is going to persist. And it's the same with the money stuff. It's the same with any area of your life. You don't deal with it properly, shit's going to hit the fan. You're going to have to deal with it. Maybe you're going to take a little bit of the negative emotional charge off of it just because you can't take anymore and you finally have somewhat of a release. But if you don't resolve the pattern, it's going to persist. It's going to continue. It's going to create more problems in the future.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, 1,000% I agree with you. And I think, our society doesn't do a great job of helping people to understand how to unwind this. And so, if you're listening now, I think it's important to not to look at this from a place of non-judgment, because really, what happened to us during the ages of 0 to 7, which is, I bring that up, that's called our programming years, that's not our fault. Like, it's not your fault that you went through certain things, or that, maybe you experienced trauma or stress or chaotic environment or whatever it is that you experienced during that time. Maybe you had a great upbringing. My husband had a great upbringing, right? Like, so not everyone has the same level of baggage around money or baggage in general, but, it's looking at it from a place of non-judgment and just saying, okay, these are some of the things that are coming up around money. These are some of the things I heard a lot. These are some of the things I'm repeating, and looking at it from this place of non-judgment. But you're absolutely right. It's like, now we've got to face it, because although it's not your fault what happened, it is your responsibility as an adult to shift it. And the way that that you have unconscious baggage, specifically around money, is you're not making the kind of money that you want to make. Maybe you're on this hamster wheel where you feel like, oh man, I could be doing so much more, or look at all these other people who are doing so much more. Or maybe you feel stuck at a plateau. That's a big one too. That's your financial thermostat kicking in, So if you're stuck around a certain amount of income and you just don't understand why you can't break through that plateau, those are all indications that you do have, money mindset baggage. And I loved your example, what you brought up earlier, that, yeah, it's going to snowball. And the best way that I've ever heard this described is that, the universe, God, energy, whatever it is that your belief is, doesn't really matter, but maybe it's just your higher self, but imagine that you're walking down a path, right? Well, the universe is going to throw a little pebble in your way to try to get your attention. Like, hey, this needs addressed, and gently kind of nudge you to address whatever it is that's coming up in that moment. And you're looking at it like it's just a little pebble. I'm just going to go ahead and walk over that, skip right over that. No problem. I don't really want to deal with that right now. And then you walk a little further, and then a bigger size rock is going to be, in the way on the path. And you're like, well, it's still easy enough enough for me to kind of jump over. I don't really want to deal with this right now. Got other things going on. And then it's going to come to that critical mass, like you said, where there's going to be this massive boulder that you actually are not going to be able to continue to walk on the path. You have to deal with it now. And you never want to wait till that point comes, because those kinds of events can be a bit more chaotic and a bit more catastrophic. So, it's just taking a look at if things are good in your life right now from an income standpoint. That doesn't mean that there's no unconscious baggage. Take a look and just open up the possibility of, hey, if there were some things that were holding me back, what would they be? What are some of the things that I continue to talk about on a daily basis? A lot of people will say things like, I'm not good with money, or I'm not a good, investor, or whatever it is. I'm not a good business person. I don't really do well in that. And just start to get present to that, and then ask yourself, when did you decide that? Like, when did you decide that you're not good with money? When did you decide you're not a good business person? Or when did you decide that, you're not really here on this earth to make 10K, 20K, 100K months, whatever it is that you're going after, and start to get present to that. And again, just bringing the awareness is going to be massive. You can really shift a lot, just kind of opening your eyes and really taking a step back and saying, okay, what actually is going on? If there were things, if I would open up my mind to the possibility that there are things going on behind the scenes, what would that look like?
Awesome. I love this conversation. Now I want to shine the spotlight on you a little bit as a business owner yourself, because a lot of the people listening, they've overcome their own mindset challenges to get to where they are. And certainly we continue, right? New level, new devil. We continue to face those unconscious things. They come up. In your own business, you don't have to share your entire autobiography, but is there something that you had to overcome with your own old baggage, your own conditioning as a business owner to get to where you are today?
How long do we have? No, I'm kidding. Of course. Yeah. I mean, a lot. I think the biggest thing that comes up for me in this conversation is really going from that employee to an entrepreneur mindset. So I've been dealing with money my entire life. I've made a ton of money in the corporate world. I was there for, 15 years. And it was one thing that I've been investing people's assets, and I was managing, probably over $100 million whenever I left the corporate world. So, I've been dealing with lots and lots of money for most of my adult life. And it was really interesting because when I decided to quit my corporate job, I left that in 2019, end of 2019. And then I decided to try to build two businesses at once. And so I'm still a financial advisor, and I still work in that capacity. So that's one of my businesses. And then coming into, the space of the online space to really be able to educate people as to all of the things that we're talking about that I've seen for, 15 years. And I really felt called to want to do that and to help other entrepreneurs. And so one of the biggest things, though, that I was met with that I did not expect was, I was one of the top sales individuals year after year. I was always ranked very highly in my corporate jobs. And I was always really good at that. But for some reason, like as soon as I wanted to go and charge for my services, coming into the entrepreneurial space, it was like, oh my God, why am I not feeling worthy of charging? Why do I feel like I'm not qualified to be doing this, even though on my resume, speaks for itself. So that is such a massive thing that I see often is, you feel really comfortable in maybe a sales role. A lot of us who are entrepreneurs, we have held some sort of sales role, in the past, right? And so you feel very comfortable doing that for someone else because maybe they set the pricing or they set the parameters. But whenever it's you, now you're like all of your unconscious baggage comes up. So I always say the way that you have unconscious baggage, a very fast way to figure it out is start a business or get into a relationship. That's going to bring up everything. Like start a business, you're going to find out if you have, worthiness issues and undeserving, and then get into a relationship that brings up a whole other, can of worms. but that was something that really was very, very present for me in the very beginning, was that imposter syndrome is another one where this shows up. I mean, I was like wondering, am I worthy of even being able to charge X amount, whatever it was when I was first starting out. And so I think that, that one was the biggest thing for me to overcome. And one thing I had to realize is that it's actually, number one, we're all born worthy. Like, nobody's stamped at birth, this one's worthy, this one's not, this one deserves more than this one. Like, that doesn't actually happen, right? So all of this is based around our own conditioning. And so recognizing that, number one, I am innately worthy of my desires and whatever that looks like. So there's actually, like, ask if you struggle with this in your life, where you have that worthiness coming up around your business, ask any one of your loved ones what they would pay to keep you on this earth, right? That's going to show your worthiness. They pay every dime that they have and then some, right? Like, you are worth so much more than you give yourself credit for. And so what you're offering out there in the world actually has nothing to do with your worth. And that was something I had to realize. It's more about the transformation for the person who's coming into my world, right? Like, I paid probably at this point well over 6 figures in personal development and, different things, that my certifications and all of those things. And that had nothing to do with the company that was providing whatever program it was to me. It had everything to do with, do I feel like I'm the type of person who's worthy of spending that kind of money on myself? And that's the same thing when we're entrepreneurs and offering, products and services, and especially like a knowledge-based business, coaches, things like that. It has nothing to do with you. That's not how we're actually supposed to be pricing things. It's really, what kind of transformation are you going to be able to provide for that other person, and allowing them to step into their sovereignty and into their power and invest the kind of money that's going to allow them to become the type of person who feels they're worthy of doing so. So that was like, those were the kind of biggest things that I had to overcome. And once that clicked for me, it was like game over. I don't have a problem, charging at all, because I know that it actually has nothing to do with me and everything to do with what I'm going to do for the person on the other side of that conversation.
I love that. That is fantastic. In fact, this entire conversation has been fantastic. Now, for anyone who is listening who wants to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah. So I hang out most on Instagram. So my name is Rebekah, and then it's _Kiger. So of course you can link that up, but it's just my first name _ my last name. And that's really where I hang out the most. I am rebranding and doing some different things with my websites, but I love to connect with others. So, if you connect with me on Instagram, I do answer all of my DMs. And I try to do that personally so that I can make sure I'm connecting, because that is something, especially in this day and age, with people feeling so disconnected from the world. I love doing just like this, right? Where we're able to connect with other like minds. And so definitely, if you're someone wanting to connect, wanting to learn a little deeper, I do run, periodic workshops throughout the year, where sometimes they're, completely free, where I'm really just going through in that align method a little deeper. So if you're someone who is struggling with that, definitely connect with me on Instagram, and I'll let you know when the next free workshop is coming up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebekah. This has been amazing, full of value. And I think maybe even a little eye-opening for some of our business owners who think, I'm doing pretty good. I don't really have too much money mindset stuff, which is really funny, because I work with clients who have a lot of money and they're still working on old baggage. So there's always room for growth. There's always room for improvement. And when we are committed, when we value ourselves, like you said, when we value ourselves and we're committed to continue to be a better version of ourselves, we need to do this in a very holistic way. And if you're limiting yourself in your business because you're not dealing with these things, you're not doing anyone any favors.
Yeah, 100%, because you're not able to reach as many people. There is no message without the money. If you want to reach more people, if you want to make a difference in the world, if you really want to, create something amazing, unfortunately, we live in a world where money is important. So there's really no way to do that without making the kind of money that, you were sent here to make. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's no reason to feel shame or guilt. Just because you have more doesn't mean someone else has less. There's no pie in the sky, and we all were sent here to create that limitless abundance. So absolutely, I agree with you 100%.
Beautiful. Thank you again, Rebekah.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And thank you to all of our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. So many great conversations. And until next time, I'll see you in the next episode.